Hello everyone, and welcome to day 2 of learning about cells. So last week, I think it was Thursday and Friday, we learned about microscopes and how microscopes are scientific tools to help us kind of zoom in on things, right? So we can see things in greater detail, like a lot greater detail, and we can see things that are super tiny that we normally can't see with our eyes. Microscopes allow us to see those creatures and those organisms, so viruses, bacteria, even protists, things that are found in ponds and lakes and whatnot. And that leads us into our new unit, which is cells. And microscopes have allowed us to understand that cells are the building blocks of life. So there's unicellular organisms, a cell or an organism that's made of one cell, and then there's multicellular organisms that are made of many cells put together. Friday, we were looking at kind of the basics of cells, and today we're moving on to a little bit more of the kind of detailed stuff that goes along with this unit. What's going on inside of a cell? So that's what we're studying today. I'm going to tell you, and I told you this today in the Google Meet, guys, I need you to be paying attention right now. So I need you to pause your Netflix. I need you to stop looking at Instagram. I need you to stop FaceTiming your friends while you're trying to kind of multitask and listen to this too. I really need you to focus in on this stuff because this is brand new information for most kids. It's going to be more difficult for you to understand than the stuff that we've talked about before. So yeah, if you can just pay attention to me, that would be great. And as I go through these slides, look at the diagrams, read as I'm reading through the stuff, read through it with me so that you can kind of be, again, I kind of compare you right now to being like a sponge or being SpongeBob, like absorb the information. Here we go. So I talked about this on Friday. Organelles are the tiny structures that are found inside of cells. So kind of like, and I gave this analogy on Friday, I kind of like how, in your body, right, you've got organs, you've got your heart, you've got your lungs, you've got your stomach, your intestines, you've got all of these different organs, and they're working kind of together to keep you alive. The same thing is happening on like a tiny little cellular level. So inside of a cell, you've got all these little different pieces, and they kind of look like candy in this picture, look like little jelly beans, but they all have certain names and they all have certain functions, and they work together to keep the cell functioning. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over each and every one of these little tiny parts. Here we go. First one is called the cell membrane. So I'm reading along here. Function, it surrounds the cell. It controls what enters and leaves the cell. So the cell membrane here goes all the way around. It's this purple line here, goes all the way around the cell. And what it does is it controls, again, what enters and leaves the cell. I kind of think of it kind of like as a security guard, like at a store or something. You've seen those people like at Target, which I don't really know why they have security guards at Target. Well, I guess people shoplift and whatnot. But anyways, so a security guard will be like, hey, you're not coming in yet. Or, hey, you're getting out of here because you're being naughty, right? So cell membrane does the same thing. It allows things to enter into the cell, and the things that are inside the cell that need to be, go away or need to leave the cell, it allows that to happen. If we're thinking of the cell as a school, so a lot of times when we're talking about cells, we like to use analogies because sometimes it's so hard for our brains to think of something so small and detailed and something we can't see. So we use analogies a lot of the time. So we're going to use this analogy throughout kind of the whole explanation here. We're going to compare the cell to a school and the different parts of a cell to the different parts that are found in a school. So, for example here, if we're comparing the cell in a school, a good analogy of what the cell membrane does would be similar to the doors of a school. So, doors let people in and out, let students, parents, people in and out, right, of the school. Cell membrane lets things in and out of the cell. Okay, another thing down here, and it's kind of crossed off, it says found in both plant and animal cells. That's one thing we also need to be able to do is compare the difference between plant and animal cells. So both of them have cell membranes. Moving on. Next one is a nucleus. Now, you should know what a nucleus does. And if you don't, here's what it does. Nucleus is the control center of the cell. It controls everything that's going on in a cell. I kind of consider myself the nucleus of my house. I control everything. Some people might think differently, but I'm the boss, right? Nucleus is the boss of the cell. In this picture here, it kind of shows it in the middle. They're not always in the middle. Sometimes they're scooched to one side or the other. But again, it's this pink blob, looks like a little bubblegum blob right here. If we're going to compare it to the school, so the cell, nucleus controls the cell. What controls the school? Would be the principal. Okay, so they both control things. And again, because plants and animals are both eukaryotes, that means you have a nucleus, you're going to find a nucleus in both plant and animal cells. Moving right along here. Chromosomes. Lots of kids have heard of the word chromosomes, but they don't know what they are. So chromosomes are actually tucked inside the nucleus. So you've got the nucleus, chromosomes are inside of it, and they contain the genetic information that kind of runs the cell. It's the recipe to make new cells. So I would like to think of this as if the school is the cell, okay, the principal is the nucleus. I would say like the computer that's in the principal's office that controls everything, that has all the information about thoughts and about how she wants to run the school, or he, that's a great example of chromosomes. Every organism has different numbers of chromosomes, and we talk about that in our genetics unit, which I'm so excited for. It's one of my favorite units. And again, chromosomes are found in both plant and animal cells. So I think of it as like the recipe, the set of instructions to make a new cell. Nuclear membrane. This has the same exact function as a cell membrane, except it's inside the nucleus, or it surrounds the outside of the nucleus. So the cell membrane surrounded the outside of the cell and controlled what could enter and leave the cell. The nuclear membrane does the same thing, except it surrounds the nucleus and controls what can enter and leave the nucleus. So I kind of like to think of this as like the doors to the principal's office. Right? So if you're thinking about, if you've ever been in Miss McGonagall's office, which maybe it's not because you were in there for a good thing, not just bad, but if you've ever been in Miss McGonagall's office, you have to go into the office and there's a door. So you can't see the principal, I guess unless she's in the hallway or something, but pretend that doesn't exist. You can, in order to get to the principal, in order to get to the nucleus, you have to travel through the door. In order to get to the nucleus, you have to travel through the nuclear membrane. And again, in this picture here, the red thing that goes around this pink thing, which is the nucleus, that's the nuclear membrane. Okay, and again, these are both found in plant and animal cells because both plant and animal cells have a nucleus. Moving along, cytoplasm. Cytoplasm is all this green stuff here in this diagram, all of kind of this empty space. It's the gel-like fluid that fills the cell. So without this fluid, everything would just kind of collapse in on itself, right? So it kind of fills the empty spaces within the cell, so everything kind of holds its structure. So again, if we're comparing it to a school, the cell to a school, you would think, that what fills the school? Air. Right? So air is kind of like cytoplasm. You could also think joy and happiness, right? They fill the school like cytoplasm, but we don't have that right now. Anyways, mitochondria. Mitochondria is one of my favorite things to learn because it turns food into energy for the cell. So it's the powerhouse of the cell, it's the power supply for the cell. That's where your tiny little food molecules go to turn into energy. In this picture, it says mitochondrion, that's the singular version of it. But mitochondria, mitochondrion, same thing. To me, they kind of look like little French bread rolls in a diagram like this. So they kind of look like a circle like this with little squiggly lines through it. So again, if we're thinking about the school analogy, the generator that supplies the energy to the school, or even like an energy drink that a student's gulping on before class in the morning, right? Gives the kid energy, gives the school energy like the mitochondria does. And if you tune in maybe tomorrow, I'll show you kind of a way that I like to remember it, and it has to do with flexing your muscles a little bit. So we'll get into that tomorrow. Endoplasmic reticulum. Now, if you really want to sound smart tonight at dinner, you should say, hey, Mom, Dad, Grandma, Grandpa, brother, sister, whoever, tell me what the endoplasmic reticulum does. They will have no idea, most likely. So endoplasmic reticulum, sometimes we call it ER because it's, let's face it, it's a really hard word to remember. What that does is it moves things around the cell. So it's kind of like a conveyor belt or a pathway to move stuff around the cell. Usually it's near the nucleus. So things can be like made in the nucleus and then they kind of get traveled through the endoplasmic reticulum. Again, a lot of times it's abbreviated ER. There are two parts to the ER, rough and smooth. You don't need to know that. So again, if we're using this analogy of a school, the endoplasmic reticulum moves things around the cell like hallways move students from class to class, or even an elevator. Okay, an elevator moves things from one floor to the other in a school. So that's my analogy. And again, these are both found in plant and animal cells. We're nearing the end here, people. Ribosomes. Ribosomes are little protein-making factories. So in your cell, products and proteins need to be created so that larger things need to be created. So found throughout your cell, you have these tiny little dots that are called ribosomes. So think of like, again, we're using the school as an analogy. Ribosomes make proteins. So like the kitchen, it makes food, it makes things. You could think of even in art class, in art class, you're making a little ceramic pot for Mother's Day or for Father's Day. Father's Day? No, for Mother's Day. Oh, Grandparents' Day? No, I don't know. But you've got anything that's where something in the school is being created or made. That's kind of like what a ribosome does. And again, these are found in both plant and animal cells. Golgi bodies package and release these proteins found in the cell. So sometimes it's kind of like the internal delivery system. I like to think of it kind of as like the UPS of the cell, or even Amazon too. You could think of it as kind of the Amazon. It packages things and sends them off. So it takes these proteins that are created, makes them what they need to be, and sends them to the outside of the cell. So again, if we're thinking about it relating to a school, you would say like the mailroom. In our school, we have a little mailroom where packages come in and mail for teachers comes in and mail for the office comes in, and then it gets kind of sorted, packaged and sorted to where it needs to go. And again, these are found in both plant and in animal cells. Water vacuole. So we have different vacuoles in our cells. A vacuole is simply just a storage compartment. So think vacuole, storage. Vacuole, storage. If it's a water vacuole, storing water, right? An area for water storage. If we're going to compare this to the school as a cell, vacuoles could be, or water vacuoles could be drinking fountains. It could be the water bottle that you're, drinking. It could be a sink, right? A sink stores water. So water vacuole stores water. There is a difference between plant and animal cells, and we'll talk more about this in a day or so. Plant cells have one large one, and animal cells have a bunch of little teeny tiny water vacuoles kind of spread throughout the cell. Waste vacuole. A waste vacuole, again, vacuole stores things. A waste vacuole stores waste, right? So basically these are like little waste baskets found throughout the cell. So when cell parts get damaged or they're not used anymore, or they're old and they don't work anymore, or there's any sort of products that are not needed, they need to eventually be eliminated from the cell, they get stored in these little vacuoles until that can happen. So again, if we're thinking of the cell as a school, a great example of a waste vacuole would be like a garbage can or a toilet or even a recycling bin, right? So you put your waste in there, you put your stuff that needs to leave and get recycled, and then eventually it'll get taken out. Food vacuole. A food vacuole stores food. So an area for food storage. Great example for our school would be like a refrigerator that's in the cafeteria, or even the cafeteria itself. It stores food. Or maybe your lunchbox, right? Lunchboxes store food like a food vacuole stores food in the cell. And again, these are found in both plant and animal cells. Last one, lysosome. So lysosome is the cleanup crew of the cell. How I think of this is Lysol, which most of us are pretty, familiar with Lysol because of dang Corona and COVID. Lysol is a common cleaner. Lysosome is the cleanup crew of the cell. So these guys go around and they digest and they take apart unused cell parts and put them into the waste vacuole until they can be eliminated. So think of it kind of like the janitors, the custodians in a school. They're in charge of cleaning up the school, making it nice and neat and clean so that everybody is happy. And again, these are found in both plant and animal cells. So I know that's kind of a lot of information to talk through in one day. And again, feel free to re-listen if you really want to. But this will be posted again, and you'll be using this slideshow in the next couple of days to do some assignments. So yeah, hopefully you were able to kind of focus a little bit and learn a little bit. There's lots of different cool stuff that we're going to be learning about in terms of cells and what cells are capable of doing. So yeah, I hope you guys have a good rest of your day. Bye.
I'm bored. Do you want to play these dinosaurs with me? It's kind of fun. Okay, you can be the Triceratops. And I'll be whatever you want me to be, Timmy. Timmy? Why don't you want to play with me? I mean, it's the end of trimester 1. We should be celebrating. We should be having fun, Timmy. What are you doing over there? Come on, come play dinosaurs with me. Please?
No, sorry. I've got a lot to do here. I need to start making some goals for trimester 2.
What? No!
Yeah, it's time. Trimester 1's over. These are my goals. I need to show up on time to my meets. I need to do my assignments on time. I need to participate more, and I need to advocate for myself. Rory, what that means is I need to ask for help when I need it. Time to read. It technically is Dear Day, and I need to be reading more. So here we go. I need to read. Rory, I think you need to make some goals for yourself for trimester 2.
I don't need any goals. I'm doing just fine. Fine, I'll make a list. That's actually a good idea.